We broadcast every morning at 10 a.m. during the week, and this morning we had, who did we have? Do you know what? I've already almost forgotten who we had. We had Sarah Pascoe, we had Natalie Haynes talking about the classics, and at the beginning of the week we started with Mark Gatiss as well. Now we're doing one of our specials. Today it is an astronaut special with our friend Chris Hadfield. And before that, just a few things to tell you. One of the things to tell you is that these are now also going to be recorded as audio podcasts. So if you just want an audio version, everything we've done is now available on iTunes. Thank you very much also to Melinda and Joe, who made all of this possible by doing all of the tech tests that were required to make this work. And thank you very much to Trent Burton as well. And with that done, we can get started. Oh, I should also tell you, by the way, there is a kind of tip jar at the bottom, and what we're doing with that is we're trying to gather together money for some of the artists who are going to find it quite tough over the next few months, because whatever happens in this situation, pretty much all live work has now been cancelled for 3 months or so, and it may well go on longer than that. So we're trying to make sure that we've got a fund to help artists who are really struggling, and also for a lot of the venues, some of the smaller venues, some of the small art centres as well, so that we can donate some money to them so they can keep people employed and they can keep going. That is the paperwork done. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Chris Hadfield.
Hello, Robin. And I think for a podcast, I know for sure that I look better in audio, so maybe it's a bonus for us both.
Yeah, I think me in particular. No, do you know the questions that I've removed are about your looks, and they are all complimentary, by the way.
Oh,
and
okay, that's nice to hear.
A lot of people commenting that also, if they had to imagine what an astronaut was meant to look like, you are what they think they would have imagined before you even existed. So
with my Duke Kaboom mustache, yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
By nature or nurture, the destiny of you going into space was there. We've got so many to go through the questions, because we've had loads of questions from kids and adults, and the first question was something I would have asked anyway, and I think it's probably something you've been asked a lot in the last week in particular. This is from Susie Gage, who's a scientist and an author, and she just wanted to know if you have any advice for how to manage the stresses and difficulties of a sense of isolation, having of course had 3 trips on the ISS.
Susie, I sure do. I trained for it basically for my entire life, to live in an extremely isolated place with an all-pervasive, unavoidable surrounding of danger, which is sort of the boat people find themselves in, or the spaceship people find themselves in right now. So 4 things, Susie. Number 1, don't just be afraid. Understand what you're afraid of. Like, actually become expert in the danger that surrounds you, so that you don't need to be afraid. The greatest antidote for fear is competence, understanding things. Dig into it. How did this disease start? What actually transmits it from person to person for real? How far away do you need to be? And then what are the early symptoms of it? How do you treat those symptoms? What are the odds for a person of your particular demographic? Who's most at risk? Who do you just become expert on it. It puts a lot of your fears at ease. Second thing is sort of list your constraints. What is deciding sort of what I can do and what I can't do? Maybe I'm taking care of an elderly person, or someone with a medical condition, or a little child or something, or my main source of income has now dried up and I need to find some way to survive the next, whatever it is, 6 weeks or 2 months without normal income. How am I going to do that? What other work could I do? There's lots of work cropping up right now that doesn't necessarily need to be done right close to somebody. How am I going to deal with my particular set of constraints? And then once you've got the risks and your particular constraints, then make up a list of things now that you want to do, or that need to get done. Give yourself a mission. Next, what is, you're a little crew in your little spaceship right now, essentially. What is our mission? What is success for us? And it doesn't need to impress anybody. It doesn't need to be world shaking. Just what are we trying to get done in the next hour, or the next 5 hours, or by the end of today? Or if this runs like we've seen in China, maybe this is a 6-week big impact. So what's our objective for the next 6 weeks? What does success look like? And then give yourself a list. And then number 4, maybe the most important of all, take action. Start doing things. Pick something off the list and go do it. It's so easy to drop into some sort of externally justified or precipitated lethargy, but don't do that. On board a spaceship, you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's a tiny little place. There's no one there to take care of things but you. And you're surrounded by the constant threat of meteorites and fires and all kinds of things. But there's a million cool things to get done. And when you get done the obligatory start, you can float around weightless or do 100 somersaults or watch Asia go by or write a song or write poetry or whatever, phone family or take care of, other problems. Take advantage of where you are to do things that you want and start getting at your list. And that combination, understand the risk, figure out your constraints, give yourself a mission, some objectives, and then take action and repeat. And that's how we thrive on spaceships. And if you can find a way to apply that maybe to yourself and your little crew, hopefully it'll be helpful.
That's really interesting. It's interesting. I've been seeing a lot of different people talk about anxiety. And one of the things that I found interesting for people who have anxiety a lot of the time already, some of them are saying they're actually finding this almost easier because their anxiety is so many different things, so many uncertainties. And in this situation, they can actually go, oh, I know what I'm anxious about, as opposed to all of the strange pinpricks of the variables of existence.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it helps focus a little bit. And even though you may not have wanted this, it gives a pretty clear sense of purpose and what needs to happen. But just because things have shifted doesn't mean necessarily for you individually it needs to be by definition worse or horrible or something. I keep hearing people saying, oh, what are you going to do now that you're cooped up? Well, that's just how you've chosen to visualize it in your head. You're always cooped up. You're not effortlessly flying around the world all the time. You live in a very constrained set of circumstances. Those have just shifted a little. And you have the entire access to not just Robin's eclectic library there behind him, but the entire universe of information is right there at your fingertips to pursue anything you want. So maybe rephrase it in your own mind. I'm now free of a lot of my normal obligations. I can perhaps do some things that I haven't found or made time to do. And obviously it's a time to get to know the people that you're locked away with better. And so that can be both a blessing and a curse also. But a lot of it is just how you choose to approach it. And if you're always a little bit nervous about the world has gotten a little smaller, and maybe that's a bit of a relief.
Yeah, I think some of the things, sometimes I think, what would I normally be anxious about now that I don't have to be because I'm, cooped up? We've got loads of great, this is from Archie Gosling, who's 6 years old, and he would like to know, how do you go to sleep in space, and is it hard?
Really, Archie, the first question is, when do you go to sleep in space? Because you go around the world every 90 minutes, and you get a sunrise or a sunset every 45 or 46 minutes. So when is it bedtime? Kind of arbitrary, really. But we people are more productive if everyone's on the same work cycle, and the people in mission control can take better care of us. So we decided to choose one place on Earth that would be our time zone that we would live to. And we chose London, England, Greenwich, because it's sort of the traditional time stamp for the world. So when the Queen gets up, we get up. That's the plan. And so our alarms go off at 6 a.m. and then you go to bed around 10 or 11 at night, London time. And you could just turn down the lights, close your eyes, relax, and float away and go to sleep. But often your body temperature goes down a little during the night and you get a little cold. That's why you often, with your diurnal cycle, you need a blanket. So you'd be cold. And also the wind inside the space station, the forced air system, would slowly pull you through the station until punk, you went up against one of the air intakes and you'd spend the night stuck up against an air intake. So that's not what you want to do. So we have sleeping bags. We tie them to the wall with one little shoestring. And when it's bedtime, you brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, float into your sleeping bag. It's got armholes, zip it up. And now you're floating weightless, just suspended by one shoestring to the wall. No mattress, no pillow. You have each of us has a little sort of sleep pod. You close the door so it's a little bit private. And then you turn the fan down as low as you can, but still have the fresh air to breathe. And then shut off the light and relax every muscle in your body. And like an infant inside the womb, your arms float up in front of you, your waist bends a little, your knees float up a little, your head tips forward, Every muscle in your body is relaxed. You don't need to roll over. You don't need a pillow. Your shoulder doesn't get sore. It's immensely comfortable, and you just float off to sleep. It's great. I hope you get a chance to do it, Archie, because it's the best sleep ever. If we ever do start building hotels in orbit around the world, so one of the big selling points will be the weightless bed. It'll be a great sleep for everyone.
Nicola Howard's children, Arlo and Silas, they would like to know what very simple task on Earth becomes incredibly difficult in space. Is there one in particular?
Silas and Arlo, it's counterintuitive. Obviously, moving around is effortless. You can float forever. You can be the world's best gymnast. You can effortlessly do things that are impossible on Earth. And we never wear shoes because you never stand up, except when we exercise. We have like a resistive exercise machine that you have to do squats on, and we have an exercise bicycle. So we put on running shoes or trainers to exercise. And one of the hardest things to do is to put on a set of shoes in space. Sounds silly, but think about how you put shoes on Earth. You don't put your shoes on standing up. You sit down normally, and then you grab the shoe with both hands and you put it on your foot and you do up the laces with both hands. Well, that means that one foot and two hands are both busy. So if you're weightless, what is keeping you where you want to be? By the time you've got both hands and one foot free, then you're probably floating around the ship. And what happens to your other shoe while you're putting this one on? And I tried for 6 months. I said, I'm going to do it perfectly this time. I would float one shoe next to me, and I'd get the other shoe, let go really carefully, start putting this shoe on. And by the time I got this shoe on, I was upside down and the other shoe had disappeared every time. And I'd have to go, where did that thing go to? And so the most trivial, natural thing of putting on your shoes, that's hard without gravity.
Jennifer, who's 9 years old, she would like to know, what do you eat in space? I think, did you make a burrito on one of the things when you were up on the ISS? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, and we chose a burrito on purpose. What do we eat? Well, we're a long way from the greengrocer, obviously, and a long way from any store. And on board, we have very limited food storage facilities. We don't have a huge refrigerator, or we don't even have a stove or an oven or a microwave. So that really limits what sort of things you can cook, and nothing will stay in the pan anyway. So all we really have is a little warming oven about the size of a small valise, a suitcase, and we have a water injector, and it'll squirt out hot water and room temperature water. That's all we got. So all of our food has to match that, and it has to last for like a year on the shelf. So imagine if you were going camping for 2 weeks. What food would you carry in your backpack? It's that sort of food that will keep, food that won't spoil, food that doesn't need to be refrigerated or have a complicated preparation, pre-packaged stuff, a tin of tuna or dehydrated food. And because we have a rehydrator, of course, you can have dehydrated, peas, and you slide them over the needle and you turn and you push. You want hot water, you could have cold peas, but most people hot peas, and it fills it up, and then you stick it to the wall while the peas soak up the water. Then you carefully cut it open, and it needs to be creamed peas, otherwise the peas would fly all over the room. And then you dip in with your spoon, and now you've got hot, reconstituted creamed peas. And they're all right. It's not bad food. I wouldn't become an astronaut for the food. That's definitely not the high point, but it's good enough. And after 6 months, I came back to Earth. I weighed the same. And in fact, I had less fat and more muscle after 6 months because it's a good, healthy diet. No pizza, no fries, no chips, so it's actually a pretty healthy place to be. The food's all right. It kept me healthy. But it's not home cooking.
But you get supplies coming up every now and again, don't you? And aren't you allowed to make you're allowed to kind of have special requests for things that wouldn't necessarily last? I mean, did you have something in particular you thought, oh great, I can have that, or was there someone else in there you thought, wow, that is what they want? That's the food they want to choose?
We have it's an international space station. People from 15 different countries. That means 15 different cultural cooking homes. There's most countries of the world don't have spotted dick, or Vegemite or sushi or whatever, or maple syrup or whatever country you're from. So each of the countries likes to contribute some specialty food to give some variety to the astronauts' diet. We still have the main bulk of food, which is just standard food produced by NASA and the Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos. But there's a lot of variety food. Food tastes a little bland up there because your sinuses are always clogged up because there's no gravity to drain them. So that's it's like when you have a bad cold, you can't taste your food as well. So it's nice to have a little extra spice. So we have a pretty good spice rack with wasabi and hot sauce. We can't sprinkle anything, so you can't sprinkle pepper. So we have pepper in oil, so you can squirt peppery oil on your food. And you can't have bread because bread spoils quickly, but also think about when you eat bread, look at all the crumbs that are left on your plate. Without gravity, those crumbs you'd breathe them, they get in everything. So we need bread that doesn't make crumbs. So that's a flat bread, like a tortilla. And to go back to your original question, that's why we had a burrito, because we have flatbread up there, taco kind of bread, and that works fine. But yeah, the unmanned ships come up, the robot ships, and they always have the staples food, the regular food, as well as hopefully a little care package of something unusual and tasty.
This one's from Marnie, who's 7 and like Spaceman Hadfield. And
Nice.
She would like to know, what would happen if a bit of space junk hit a rocket that you were in? How much damage would it cause, more than a bird hitting a plane?
Marnie, we get hit by space stuff constantly. The Earth gets hit by material from space continuously. 40 tons a day of stuff hits the Earth. Most of it natural, rocks, meteorites, little bits of asteroids, little bits of comets. So the Earth is constantly bombarded. 40 tons a day hits the Earth. And all of that comes past the space station. So inevitably, some of it hits the space station. And most of it's not man-made. Most of it's natural junk. But there are a certain number of human-made things in orbit, and sometimes they hit us as well. But most of them are little. So even though they're going incredibly fast, they're small enough that the armor on the outside of the space station can protect us. But if it's a big piece, then it would do damage. And if it was hit a part of the space station that was fragile, it could do serious damage. It could destroy our cooling system, or it could punch a hole in the station. And we practice for that all the time. If the pressure starts to drop, what are you going to do? It's like a leak on a submarine. What are you going to do? And we run through the protocol. We take care of ourselves first. If we got a few minutes, then we run and we start closing hatches from the outside in to try and isolate the area that has the leak. But if the leak is in a central critical area, you can't do much about it. And we'll close off as much of the station as we can. And if the station has a fatal leak, then we get into our little, the ship that brought us up there, which is sort of like our lifeboat, and come home. If the leak is in the lifeboat, because that might have been where the meteorite hit, then that's the first place we test. And then we would just close the hatch to the lifeboat and realize, okay, there's no way home for a while. We're going to have to wait until Earth sends us another ship to bring us home. But at least we'd be alive.
I'll come up with another question in a moment. Just quickly tell everyone that after Chris, we have the author, aka Jim Bob, formerly of Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine. He's going to be talking about his book, which involves alien abduction and David Bowie. It's a novel, by the way, Chris, in case you think we're, for purposes of balance, we're also going to have someone who's been abducted by an alien. This is a question which I think will probably lead somewhere. This is from 10-year-old Freydis, and she would like to know, what music did you play in space?
Freydis, there's a huge music library on board the space station, of course. You can access almost any song. And we often have music playing. Some of the cosmonauts and astronauts like to hear music all the time, and they don't want to inflict it on everyone else. So they have a little player of some sort, and they have earplugs in, so they're listening to music. But there are also musical instruments on the space station, because some of the astronauts are also musicians and composers and singers. And so I listened to music some, but I played a lot of music, not while I was working, but in the evenings, especially when I was supposed to be asleep. I would steal the first hour of my designated sleep time and write music and play music. And then I figured out on my iPad how to use GarageBand, and I could then lay down multiple tracks along the same rhythm, the same click track. And so then I could actually not just compose, but record on board. And I wrote an entire album the music on the space station, as well as covering a couple tunes. I did a thing with the Chieftains. We did Moon Dance together. And I did a thing with a Canadian band called the Bare Naked Ladies. I co-wrote a song with Ed Robertson. I sang that song live with 700,000 kids joining in from all around the world with me. And then I did a cover of speaking of not aliens, but David Bowie. I did a cover of a David Bowie tune as well. I did Space Oddity up there, and tens of millions of people have seen my version of Space Oddity. So music is everywhere, including on board a spaceship. And it's fundamental, I think. We don't do well without art. It's hard to go through a day without hearing music. How could you not? And your body's constantly, playing snippets of music in your head. So I think it's ancient and necessary. I'm going to play a very quick clip of a song that I wrote on board the space station. Even on Earth, I keep a guitar next to me. This song is, I wrote it for my daughter. I have 3 kids and a granddaughter. And I wrote this as if I was sitting on the end of her bed while she was growing up. It's called Space Lullaby. Can you hear it okay, Robin?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Darkness falls, a favorite blanket that surrounds us all. A quiet ending to a busy day of noise and troubles we have put away to sleep. You and I, you in your bedroom, me up in the sky. As close as dreaming, we are holding hands. We hug so tightly as we lay now down to sleep. We say I've been away too long. I'm only here and then I'm gone. But I am coming home to tuck you into bed. And I will love you now and always to the stars above. Rainbow of color swirling overhead. A favorite story that we read to fall asleep. To sleep. Lay now down to sleep.
Thank you.
Space Lullaby. There you go.
That was great. Thank you very much. This is Toby, who's 6, and Gabe, who's 4. They would like to know, how far did you travel during the time you were in the ISS? So, if you can give us some kind of day and distance.
Gabe and Toby, it's hard to measure, because you're going so fast. It's like when you're in an airplane. When you look out the window, the ground's far enough away, you can't really see how fast you're going. But on board the spaceship, we're going ridiculously fast, ludicrously fast. We're going 5 miles a second. So, and the space station's the size of like a football pitch. Imagine if a football pitch was out the window of your house and 1 second later, it was 5 miles away. That's how fast we're going. So that means we go around the world every 92 minutes. It means we go 17,500 miles every hour. So the numbers are huge. And so if you tally it up for me, I've gone about 70 million miles while in space. 70 million miles, 2,650 times around the world. So yeah, it's really, really fast. You have to go even faster to go to the moon, or to leave the moon and go further. You have to go even faster than that. But and the fastest thing we've ever built is called the Parker Solar Probe, and it's going 10 times that fast as it's going down to look at the sun up close. But me, I've gone 25 times the speed of sound, and been 70 million miles, and it's a pretty huge privilege. I hope you get to do the same thing.
Tom would like to know, I haven't got an age for Tom, but Tom would like to know, how would an infectious disease be dealt with in space, or if in future in space colonies?
Well, just like everybody's doing now with self-isolation, the best way to deal with an infectious disease is not to catch it and not to give it to anybody else. That's the best way. There's lots of horrible infectious diseases out there. We control them by keeping the people that have it separate from the people who don't. This has just become global because nobody was immune. On board a spaceship, in order to keep the diseases away, before we launch, we spend 2 months or 2 weeks in a really tight quarantine isolation, so that none of the astronauts can catch a new cold. And if they already had a cold, then we'll know about it and it'll pass before they have to go to space. We even take rubbing alcohol and wipe down our whole body just before we get into our spacesuit, just to make sure that there's no like any sort of skin fungus or something on us, because you wouldn't want to even take that up to space. But if somehow some sort of problem, a cold or a virus, got on board the space station, everybody's trained in medical procedures. Some people are trained pretty extensively, like an emergency medical technician, or often there's a doctor who's also an astronaut. And we have a good pharmacy on board. We have like a chemist's shop supply up there. It's not huge, but it's all the essential stuff that we need. So we could take care of a problem. And if somebody got really, really sick and we couldn't deal with it on board, then we could always, a few of us, get into our little rescue ship, our little lifeboat, and come home in a few hours, just in case someone's life was threatened. But hopefully we'll never get to that. We're very careful to avoid it.
There's questions coming from live as well. Rosie would like to know, did you have, and I know you did a wonderful book of your photographs that you took from the ISS. Did you have a favourite thing to look at, look back down on Earth?
Well, first off, you can look out to space, or you can look back at the Earth. Looking out to space is beautiful, as everybody knows. Go outside on any beautiful dark night. But what's really different from space is looking back at the Earth, because you cross Canada, which is huge, in 9 minutes. You see all of Canada in 9 minutes, the whole planet in 92 minutes. You go through the aurora of the world. They ripple around your spaceship. You see a sunrise or a sunset 16 times a day. So you get to see some magnificent things. But I think the most beautiful place on Earth, just like if you're just artistic, is the Bahamas, because it's a huge shallow reef, but it's also got some very deep sections. If it were dry, it would look like an immensely deep cliff, thousands of feet tall. So it goes from this almost black blue right to the beautiful, shallow, iridescent pale blues of the coral reefs. So it looks like this big shining butterfly. It's gorgeous. It's every blue that exists. So my favorite place to look at, amongst many, is the Bahamas.
And we've only got time for one more question. This is from 4-year-old Max, who's watching at the moment. And Max would like to know, what games were you allowed to play in space?
Max, there's not too much time to play games. We're busy. But we played a couple games. Max, maybe one you'd like in space is hide and go seek. Imagine if you could have no gravity, the places you could hide. You know, you could float up to the top corners of the room and no one would think to look for you there. So hide and go seek was pretty fun. We'd also have races. Without gravity, you can fly. So we'd see who could fly the whole length of the station the fastest. And then one other game is to see how long, if you moved away from all the walls and you let go, can you let go so carefully? How long can you just float and not bump into a wall? And if you're really careful, it can be several minutes before the air currents push you into a wall. We also played darts with a special type of dart, and we played Scrabble. And some of the guys like playing chess up there, but mostly we work up there because there's not too many of us. But games are important, and so yeah, once in a while we play games.
Thank you so much, Chris. We had loads of questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time for all of them. Thank you very much to, I think it's Susan or Suzanne. I never know. She's actually from Toronto, and she always sends us messages when we're doing the Generator Show. So I hope that I will see you next year, Chris, back in Toronto on Generator Show.
Looking forward to it. Generators of Delight every year, and I hope to see you again at December time at the Great Compendium at the Apollo Theater. Take care. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Go and follow Chris's work. There is, I'm sure many of you do anyway, but his Twitter handle is, as far as I remember, it's at CMDR Commander _Hadfield. And there's always just so many interesting things he's putting up of launches and images from space, and it's great. And someone else who's brought tremendous amount of joy from their albums, both in his band Casting Ensemble Sex Machine, and then his really wonderful solo stuff, and now a novelist as well. He's been a novelist now for must be at least 10 years, is JB Morrison, aka Jim Bob. Hello, Jim Bob.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. That's much.
when I did one of your things at Hammersmith Apollo, and I went on after Richard Dawkins. I feel a bit like that now.
You are. I mean, is it 10 years you've been writing novels now? It must be at least stories.
Yeah, so a bit longer than 10 years. Yeah. Oh no, yeah, 10 years. It is 10 years.
See, I'm paying attention.
Yeah,
you're not.
It's anniversary.
And that's why we've got on you this special JB Morrison anniversary show.
Yes.
I thought the warm-up act was fantastic for you, and that always reminds me. There was a wonderful where Sean Locke was doing. There was a huge Amnesty gig at Wembley Arena, and it was overrunning. And eventually, the producer went out and said, "I'm so sorry, Sean. We haven't got time to put you on." And then Tom Jones went on and did 20-minute set right with the Stereophonics. I think it was. Like, Wembley loved it, and then they went, "Oh, by the way, Sean, actually, we've been told we can let you on." So Sean Locke, who wasn't as famous as he is now, just kind of wandered on, and he went, "He's good, isn't he? I'll have him support me again sometime." It's brilliant. So your new book, God Awful Small Affair,
Yes.
which I've read and which is delightful, and which is, well, it's David Bowie and it's alien abduction and it's Brixton. And where did this story? Do you have a sense of where it came from?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from a weird place because, well, I mean. There's two novels in the paperback. So the second one, the Harvey King one, I wrote that first, but couldn't find a publisher. So I thought start something else, and I didn't really know what to write. So I was just kind of trying to think what to write. And around that time, basically, I always have to. This always sounds terrible when I say it, but my mum died on the same day as David Bowie, so it was sort of always. So that was a very strange time, just generally, obviously. And I felt I wanted to put that into something, and I didn't know what. And sort of this thing came to me of having something starting on that day or the anniversary of that day. And that kind of brought in David Bowie, and it just sort of took off from there. So it's my mum.
That was a bad, because my mum went about the month before as well. And then Lemmy as well in the bad time both personally and artistically then for both of us. So let's gild over that.
Yes.
And in terms of alien abduction ideas of that as well. I mean, we're both of that generation where when we were growing up there were so many books out there, the Unexplained magazine and Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, and these ideas of where were the unidentified flying objects that were coming to us.
Yeah, and the films for me really, things like E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I still love those films. Like sort of. So for me, it was probably those films, I guess.
Yeah, so much. Well, anyway, God Awful Small Affair is fantastic. It's available now. Obviously, it's available in bookshops, but they're all locked, so you can't get it there. But
you can get it online from bookshops,
can't you?
They'll post it to you.
Yeah, you get it online, and you can also you can get it for Kindle and stuff like that.
It's on Kindle, and there's a pile of signed, like a large pile of signed copies at the Carty-USM store, and they're still posting. But yeah, otherwise Kindle.
Brilliant. Play two songs for us.
I'm going to play two songs. Yes, I'm going to play two songs that sort of fit the mood depending on who you are, the mood of the time we're in at the moment. So the first one is a pessimistic point of view, and the second one is optimistic. The first one, pessimistic, typically is a Carter song. So from the Worry Bomb album, which is called My Defeatist Attitude. So I'll start with that, and then I'll do the optimistic Jim Bob one. Okay. I'm confused, it's funny, but I'm not amused. I'd fight the system, but what's the use? It's fire resistant and waterproof. I wish it would rain. It blends in with the hurt and pain, pretending I'm like Kurt Cobain. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And nothing planned. Your every wish is my command. I'll feed your fish, I'll hold your hand, make a fist and join your band. down and see me and I'll take you to the alleyways and avenues, the longitude and latitude, and physicist attitude. I think I'll stand bed this week, sew myself into the sheets, destroy my health with beer and sweets, and daytime television speaks. To the alleyways and avenues, the longitude and latitude, the mighty physicist attitude. That's that one. Take these off. I realised it was singing with ear mufflers. This is the Jim Bob song, which is called "Everything Is Going to Be All Right." Everybody's happy, insomniacs can't sleep. Word is out, there is no doubt, God's work is complete. There'll be no blues on Monday, we'll stay at home and watch the homeless and the hungry dethrone the king of pop. The bomb has gone, the bomb has gone, the missiles and the mines. Cousteau's wish to save the fish came true at the same time. Everybody's happy, there's nothing left to fight. Today is spring and everything is going to be alright.
Thank you so much, Jim Bob. Jim Bob's albums are available online. And are you at Bandcamp as well, or are you all over the show? Where's the best?
I'm not really on Bandcamp. I'm sort of a good place to go is my website, I suppose, Jim-Bob, and then you'll find everything there. You know, it's on Spotify. It's on Spotify on all those usual things, but not all my solo stuff is on Spotify because I've kind of resisted giving them any of my money.
They are so everyone go out there, find Jim Bob stuff. His books and his music are both worth your time. And just remind you as well that we have a tip jar at the end of every gig. If you are able to put something in, if you've enjoyed this, because there are no real shows as such out there at the moment, we're trying to make as much money as possible for some of the artists who are going to kind of be finding it very tough over the next few months, as well as some of the smaller arts venues that we all play that may also be possibly facing the chop if we can't manage to make enough money to kind of keep those people in employment. And they are such an important part of a lot of communities as well, those art centres. It's not just the shows at night, it's loads of other things. We have places like the Rondo Bath and the Pound in Corsham and many others. So thanks very much. Tomorrow morning it's Steve Merchant, Les Dennis, and a friend of yours, Jim Bob. It's Miles Hunt from the Wonder Stuff as well.
Good, say hello
with us. I will, and I'll say hello from you as well, but I'll definitely say hello to him anyway.
Yeah, why not?
And on Saturday, Josie's going to be doing one of the stand-up comedy shows. She did one last Sunday as well, which is also online. All the shows we've done so far, Mark Gatiss, Joe Brown, Brian Cox, etc., they're all online. And on Sunday at midday, Brian Green and Brian Cox and Helen Chersky answering your science questions. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.